Bob. I was in the Army. Now, generally the services is the Air Force, the Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and the Army. And the Army is usually the guys, when you hear on the news, they talk about boots on the ground. That's the Army. Those are Army guys we're talking about. Now, when I was in, served in the Vietnam War, and I was drafted in 1968. I went in the Army on May 1st, which is May Day, which just happened to be a coincidence.
What does drafted mean, Mr. Bob?
That means, back in those days, if they had a lottery system where they picked numbers, and every male or boy that was 18 years or older signed up for the draft, and if they needed you and your number came up, you went in whether you wanted to or not. So I was drafted in the Army. But at that time I was just out of college, and I kind of felt like I should serve in the Army as a service to my country, which is sort of a patriotic thing to do, I guess. And yes.
Is college a long ways away drive?
Yeah, it was. I went to college in California. I was living in California at the time.
Ooh, could you point to that on the map right beside you, Mr. Bob, where Colorado is and where California is?
Yeah, this is where I was living up near Sacramento in California. And what did you want to know the other one?
Where Colorado is, so they can see how far away they are.
Oh, yeah, Colorado is right here, and of course, Craig is up in this corner. Craig, Colorado. I lived over here, and I went to, when I got drafted, I went into at the Oakland Army Terminal, which is near San Francisco, and after they gave me my uniform and a bag of clothes, then they sent me to Fort Lewis, Washington, which is up here for basic training.
Ooh.
And those guys kill bad guys?
Well, I didn't actually kill any bad guys, but I was where a lot of bad guys were getting killed eventually.
Mr. Bob, can you tell us a little bit about those clothes in your bag?
Yeah, well, I had, in those days, they didn't have camouflage clothes. We just all wore either a brown dress uniform or what they called fatigues, and they were green, and you'll see some of the pictures that I have.
Could we look at a picture really quick?
Yeah.
Okay, track DC.
This one, does that show up? Well, it's hard to see everybody, but you can see we're all wearing green.
You're supposed to turn on the light.
You know what? How about at the very end, we'll turn them off and look at all the pictures. But this just kind of shows you what the uniforms looked like.
Yeah, see, everybody is in green, and we all have a helmet, and the white tags you see is our name on our uniform, last name.
Is everyone dressed the same? Yes, they're all dressed the same.
Yeah. So.
Let's ask a few more questions at the end, because maybe Mr. Bob will answer your question when he's talking. So you went to Washington.
Yeah, I went to Washington, and in basic training, it's a lot of running and exercise and climbing and also learning how to shoot a rifle. They teach you that, and they teach you first aid, and they teach you how to work together with the group. And you can, I'm the guy in the middle on the bottom row. You see the tallest guy sitting down?
There he is. There's Mr. Bob. So where did you go after basic training?
Well, after basic training, I had wanted to go to pilot school. And however, there was gonna be a delay because the classes were backing up. So one of my choices was to go to air traffic control school. Do you guys know what an air traffic controller is?
No.
Well, an air traffic controller works in the tower.
It's when you shoot the other bad guy planes down.
Well, not exactly. I worked in the control tower at an airport, and air traffic controllers in the tower
How is it like?
clear airplane. Yeah, it's a big tower. Any of you been to Denver?
Towards the sky.
Yeah, it's a real tall tower,
Wow.
and I would clear airplanes to land or take off. Okay?
So he made sure airplanes wouldn't crash into each
Yeah,
other.
so they stay apart.
My dad in his shop, he has a picture of an army guy.
Oh, that's good. Lots of Army guys.
Who's the boss's name?
My boss's name? In basic training, I still remember him. His name was Sergeant Steiger. I didn't know his first name because in the Army, we just called everybody by their last name. That way, if there were 5 Bobs in the class, you could be confused, whereas there's only one Neher. That's my last name. Or Smith, or Jones, or whatever.
And from you go somewhere, from the sharks and crocodiles, from they come, you'll have to kill them.
Yeah, I didn't have to though, I was lucky. But remember now, this is where I went to basic training in Washington State. And my air traffic,
Oh, listen, let's see where he went next.
my air traffic control school was down here in Biloxi, Mississippi, which is right on the Gulf of Mexico. And basic training was about 2.5 months long. And my school down in Biloxi, Mississippi at Keesler Air Force Base was also about 2.5 months long. And that class, to become an air traffic controller, we went to class every day, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, just like you're going to school now. I went to school there, and we learned how to be air traffic controllers. We learned everything about the weather, about the rules of separation of aircraft, and you know, those things that have to deal with doing all that.
Are you still I had this toy bow and arrow and it shot in a tree and it was sticking through him.
Oh, okay. So anyways, when I completed, let me just finish this story. When I completed my air traffic control class, I went to Savannah, Georgia, which is over here on the Atlantic Ocean, on the coast of Georgia. And I was an air traffic controller at the airport at a place called Hunter Army Airfield, which was where all the Army had lots of helicopters and some fixed-wing aircraft. So you know the difference between a helicopter that has the thing spinning on the top, and then an airplane has wings, where a helicopter just has the big propeller on top.
I want to be one.
Wow.
I want to be the one that shoots the bad guys.
Yeah, well, that's a tough thing to do sometimes, but that's what we did. And then I was at Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia, for about three months. I was there, and then I went to Vietnam.
Oh.
And that's the war that I fought in.
Oh, there's another map below you there and a globe you could
Oh, yeah.
use to show us
Well,
where
okay.
that is.
Here we are. This is California, Washington, and Colorado's over here.
Hold on, stay seated. He's going to hold it up so that you can all see. You
Yeah,
can
let me
just,
hold this one.
there you go. Sit flat on your pockets.
So here's the United States, and right now we're in the middle, sort of, in Colorado. And remember, I was over here in Georgia. And when I went to Vietnam, I flew from Georgia to Washington State, and then to Alaska, and And then I flew down to, let's see, where is it? Oh, it's right, okay, so you see, I went to Alaska over here, and then I came all the way down here to where Vietnam is. This is China up here, and Vietnam is this little country that's green. So it's almost all the way around the world.
I didn't even know China still lives.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty big country, they're still alive. And I was at an army base in a town called Phu Hep.
Ooh, let's all try saying that.
Phu Hep.
Hep.
I don't really know what that means, but it's Phu and then HIEP.
Apparently, it's
And
just on
in there, I was at the army base at Phu Hep, and we had about 100 helicopters, and they were the gunships, we call them gunships, they had a lot of guns on them. And then they had the Hueys, which carried all the army troops in and out from the base to go out and get the bad guys. And
What
we had
did your-
about 200 of those.
What did your houses look like?
The houses were, some guys lived in tents, but most of the base had what we called hooches, which were long buildings that had separate rooms where 4 guys lived in each room, and they were 1-story buildings and about 10 rooms long, so there were about 40 guys in one building.
Ooh,
Okay?
that's a
And it-
lot.
Yeah, 40 guys, and it had corrugated tin on the roof or aluminum. You may have seen some of that around here. There's a little bit of that.
What kind of food would you eat?
Well, the food was actually not too bad, but we didn't have fresh eggs. We had dried eggs, so they mixed the dried eggs with water, and it tasted sort of like regular eggs. But that was, and then we had bacon or sausage sometimes. And it was pretty much, we ate in a place that was a big room with a lot of tables, like your cafeteria, but we called it a mess hall. That's where soldiers eat, in their mess hall. And more or less the food was just like we eat here. Even though that was my first taste, they had a lot of rice there. Yeah, I'd had rice before, but we had rice like every day. And because in Vietnam and in that part of the country, of the world, they grow a lot of rice. So we had a lot of rice. But rice is good, so not too bad.
Oh, I hate it.
So to wrap it up, Mr. Bob, do you have a story you could tell us?
Well,
You've told us a pretty good story so far.
yeah. Well, I want to tell you, you know, when I was over there with, I went over there, my class of air traffic controllers were 18 other air traffic controllers, so there were 19 of us in my class, and every one of us went to Vietnam to a different air traffic control tower. And so, while I was there, I was able, during the time off that I had from work, I was able to fly with other soldiers to go visit some of those other guys that I was at school with, because they had become friends, because I'd known them for quite a while by then. And it was interesting to hear the stories of the different places. Some were a little more dangerous than I was, and some of them were a little less dangerous than where I was. You know, we would have, there would be some attacks once or twice a week, mortar attacks or rocket attacks, and our soldiers would go out to try to look for those guys. And generally speaking, where I was, not too many American soldiers were killed, even though there were some elsewhere where a lot of them were killed. But it was just something we all worked together and tried to make it as safe as we could and follow orders and do our jobs.